Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome, everyone. My name is Diana Nguyen, and I am your MC for this afternoon's Southeast Community Links AGM. And before we proceed with our AGM today, it's going to be lots of fun, lots of stories, a lot of reports, but more importantly, celebrating 50 years. And I would like to begin to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia, including the Boonwurrung people of the southeastern Kulin Nation. We recognise their continuing connection to lands, waters and communities, and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders both past and present. I would like to thank you for watching from your homes or your offices or your cars, because cars have been great studios in 2020 and 2021. And so please use the chat box and tell us where you are watching from, which land you are watching from, so that we know which communities are joining us this afternoon. So pop it in the chat box, and I would love to acknowledge your presence here today. A little bit about me. So I'm Diana Nguyen. I'm an actor, comedian, and I'm also the co-creator of the first ever Vietnamese Australian family comedy web series in the world. And guess where this web series is based? It's based in Springvale, my hometown, where I grew up. And so it's really wonderful to be your host and MC to celebrate the work that SECL, or what I know it as Springvale Community Aid and Advice Brewery, or formerly known as SCAB. But luckily, we've changed the name and we are now known as SECL. And my memory of SCAB back in the day was in the 1990s. And my mum, a Vietnamese refugee, would sit there in the reception foyer that you enter, the same doors, that same sliding doors, would enter to get help for her forms to be translated or to have assistance. My mother, a Vietnamese refugee, came here with no English. She came here for freedom and she came here for her children. So the services that SECL provide for the community back then, now, and for the future is just wonderful to see that they've hit their 50th mark and still ongoing. So please let us know where you're watching from. So fantastic. We've got people in their home offices. Beautiful. Please let us know where you're watching from. And we are coming live to you from our Zoom event, but also on Facebook Live. So this is an opportunity for you to interact with me, and so we can have a participating fun session today, this afternoon. Also, I would also like to know who is watching and what your cultural background is. Because back in the day when my mother came to SECL, that was the Vietnamese cohort. But as we can see, Springvale, the southeast, is continually changing. So who is watching our live today? What is, or there's that term called where are you from? But I like to call it, what is your cultural background? What is your story? And I just wanted to give you a little orientation for today. So we have an action-packed agenda reflecting on and celebrating the past and gaining some momentum for the future. The first half of our meeting will celebrate 50 years of impact for the Southeast Community Links, or SECL, affectionately known as now. We'll take some time to reflect on the life of SECL's founder and patron, Merle Mitchell, AM, a true social justice giant. Then we'll share SECL's 50th year journey and hear about the plans for the future with the launch of the new strategic plan. The second part, now I promise you it's going to be fun, the second part, so please stay with us. The strategical plan and the AGM is part of future planning for this organisation, and to see an organisation go beyond 10, 20, 30, 40, but 50 years of service to community is so important. So please stay with the AGM and, bring some knowledge on how organisations run and meet the board people who keep this organisation going. So we invite you to be part of the second part of the AGM, which is the business closing off the financial year and welcoming our new and re-elected directors. So you get to watch our show. Okay, we've got people in the chat box. They're saying they're coming from Dandenong up the peninsula. Thank you for joining. We've got Noble Park, Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan background. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for popping and making our chat box live, because we usually would want to have this event in real life, but as you know, Zoom is part of the world now, and so we're embracing it, and we hope to celebrate with you in real life in 2022. And now I would like to invite one of my dear friends. She is a beautiful, gorgeous artist here in Australia. Her name is Candy Bowers, and Seckle have commissioned this special piece to mark its 50 years of impact here in the southeastern suburbs and community. Candy has written a poem called Somewhere to Go When You Have Nowhere to Turn. A little bit about Candy Bowers. She is an award-winning writer, actor, social activist, comedian, producer. Born of a multiracial South African parents, her life experience have created a unique foundation to build her body of work. A poet, a playwright, and a speaker from an early age. In 2001, she was accepted into NIDA. And her career has grown from Australia to international waters. She's created her own company. I know Candy's watching me speak about her. It's a bit of like a story of your life, isn't it? Performing on Australian main stages and tour the country with original works including Sister She, Australian Booty, which I've seen and I can tell you, everyone must see it, MC Platypus, Who's That Chick, and Hot Brown Honey. You can also catch her on the small screen on Newton's Law, Get Crackin', Tonight with Tom Ballard, and The Cry. And I promise you, you will see her so many more times now that you know her name. Please welcome Candy Bowers.
Hello, everyone. How wonderful. Now, sometimes you get asked to do things and they take a little piece of your heart. It costs you. And I think this piece really did. I was born in Dandenong and my parents came as political refugees from South Africa. So everything that Seckle do is very close to my heart also, just like Diana. Somewhere to go when you have nowhere to turn. Somewhere to go when you have nowhere to turn. When the system has failed, when you're feeling the burn. When the cupboard is empty, when there's nowhere to sleep. When your account's minus 20, when you're feeling the heat. When you're feeling the cold, when you're out on the street, when the people you love have nothing to eat. When your home is not safe, when you cannot speak. Here is a place with an ear and a seat. Here is a place with a pen and a plan. Here is a place with a heart and a hand. Here is a place you'll be seen and believed. Here is a place you are heard and relieved of the burden, the fear, the worry, the pain in your chest, in your throat again and again. Here is the shelter from the storm and the rain. Here is the balm from the cuts and the strain. Mark, just 19, barely a man, born into addiction, born into less than, struggles to keep a house in his head, struggles with drugs from a child he was fed. So he borrows cash to pay back the cash. He borrowed to pay back the cash that he said he would use to pay rent. He would use to buy food. But now he has interest and the loans have accrued, and now he has court dates and nowhere to run. No bread in his bank, no bread in his tum, nowhere to live. Mark has been stung by a system that struggles with the children born of abuse, born of drug use, an immovable system cold and obtuse, a system that cannot and will not see the cycle of incarceration, mental health and poverty. What Mark needs is a home. What Mark needs is a hand. He needs an advocate, he needs a plan, a place that can fill in that invisible gap, an expert in shifting and cutting through crap. Every person counts. Every system fair, a mantra worth repeating and hanging in the air. Every person counts, every system fair, the story of a service, the history of care. Mark found it. He fought back, he settled his debts, and mark my words, Mark, my man, is now set. financially literate, paying his way, working full-time with the dreams of the day. He'll pick up his studies, boss out in IT. Now Mark has a home and Mark is debt-free. Every person counts. Every system fair. A mantra worth repeating and hanging in the air. Every person counts, every system fair. The story of a service, a history of care. Suella was 14 when she married a man, arrived with 5 children from Afghanistan. 0 to low English, battered and bruised, no education, isolated, abused, tricked into signing for a house on this land, pages of words she did not understand, tricked by her husband, tricked by the bank, stitched into a mortgage that husband brought her to. So she left him. She battles to bring up the kids. She battles to feed them. She battles to live. 10 years of struggle, 10 years of struggle with an ex-husband disgraced. He returns with a knife and he slashes her face. He slashes her spine. He stabs her 10 times. And there is no justification, no rhythm or rhyme for what happens next is the far greater crime. The insurance she took out, assured by the bank she'd be covered in case of traumatic events, is rejected. And then child support is cut off because her ex is in prison and Suella can't work. Her children are taken. There is no income. What can she do? What is there to be done? Suella needs a home. Suella needs a hand. She needs an advocate. She needs a plan, a service that can fill in this unconscionable gap. Experts in shifting and cutting through crap. Every person counts. Every system fair, a mantra worth repeating and hanging in the air. Every person counts, every system fair, the story of a service, a history of care. Well, Suella found a place. They lifted her gaze, a financial counsellor, a guide through the maze. She kept her home and sure money's tight, but her kids are safe. Hey, the kids are all right. Suella's now fluent in English and money. The future looks good. The future looks sunny. See, time flies when you're shifting your entire trajectory. Now Suella's a homeowner and her eldest is in university. Every person counts, every system fair. A mantra worth repeating and hanging in the air. Every person counts, every system fair. The story of a service, a history of care. Erica, 55, serves couches with her girls, teenagers who find it hard to believe they rule the world. Their lives were fractured by a father using coercive control. So it's difficult to feel safe, at ease, or well, or whole. Turned away by services that couldn't grasp their hardship. No visible signs of damage, no tears, no scuffs, no rips, just constant fear and anxiety and suffocating pain, gaslit and violated, a never-ending game, no visa, no bed, no security. It's strange these other services couldn't or wouldn't see 3 Black women, a mother and her girls staying as far away as possible from the man who ruined their world. Homeless, scarred in critical need. Their mental health was decimated, starved at the root and seed. See, Erica needs a home and Erica needs a hand. She needs to be believed. She needs to make a plan, a service that can fill this unconscionable gap. Experts in shifting and cutting through crap. Every person counts and every system fair, a mantra worth repeating and hanging in the air. She found the place that could hear and see her hell, that could comprehend the violence, that had medicine as well, that had medicine, the balm for her afflictions. Now Erica and her daughters have a space to dream and heal. Every person counts and every person fair. A mantra worth repeating and hanging in the air. Every person counts and every system fair. The story of a service, a history of care, a herstory of justice, of equity and light, relentless in the struggle and relentless in the fight, breaking down the barriers, answering the prayer. Every system counts, every person counts, every system fair, from Casey to Cardinia, including my hood, Dandenong, the most vulnerable amongst us rest in this simple song. Every person counts and every system fair. Warriors of injustice, compassionate and rare. Emergency and crisis, no one even blinks. Happy 50th birthday, Southeast Community Links. Thank you. I knew I wasn't going to get through it, Diana. I was like, come on, one time.
Look, Candy, I think you'll be reading that beautiful poem in 2022,
Yeah.
in real life. So thank you so much. And the chat box is going live. Amazing, Candy. Thank you. Powerful, beautiful. Her name is Candy Bowers. You've just witnessed the celebration of Candy writing for SECL's 50th 50 years of service to the community. Thank you. And this is the Auslan way of saying thank you and applause. And so beautiful. We've got people saying so powerful. Thank you for doing justice to our work. Ah, thank you, Candy. May I ask you to all take a deep breath, deep breath, and breathe out, and let those words soak into you and your body. We've had a very big 2 years, and it's acknowledging that we are not in real life, but through art and through words, they have impact. And hold this space for you all. If you are joining us, you are joining myself. I'm Diana Nguyen, and I'm your MC for SECL's AGM today. This is not just a normal AGM, this is also a celebration of 50 years of service to the Southeastern community, but also in particular, where SECL is based here in Springvale, and an ever-changing community here in Springvale. And so I'm really excited to introduce our next guest speaker. Our next guest speaker is Federal Member Claire O'Neil MP. I've seen Claire at many events. She's always come out to the Lunar New Year festivals every year. It's so great to have her here to acknowledge SECL's work. Claire grew up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and Claire studied law. I knew I stuffed up with my mum. I should have done law. Claire did law at Monash University in Clayton. While she was at university, she was elected City of Greater Dandenong's council, and a year later became mayor of City of Greater Dandenong. Claire was elected to federal parliament in 2013, and she represents the electorate of Hotham in Melbourne's southeast, which stretches from Mount Waverley in the north to Springvale in the south, and it's home to over 130,000 people. Hotham is one of the most diverse electorates in Australia, with 35% of residents born overseas. And Claire's also a new mummy recently too. She gave birth this year in 2021. Please welcome Claire O'Neil, MP. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Diana. Firstly, how did I wind up following on from Candy? Candy, that was astounding. I mean, honestly, I would give you a standing ovation if it made sense over Zoom, but just have a look in the comments there of the effusive praise for that amazing piece of poetry. It was just extraordinary, and I feel so privileged to have heard it. So thank you for the time and the amazing artistic energy that went into creating that. And I want to say thank you too to Diana. There is no one funnier or more charming in Melbourne than Diana Nguyen. We're so proud to have you as a Springvale born and bred local, and I just love following your work, Diana. You're an absolute gun. And I want to thank the board of SECL and Peter for inviting me to speak at the AGM. I feel really honoured to be able to make a short contribution to the AGM, because SECL, or the Bureau as it will probably be always known in my mind, has this really special place in my heart. It's an organisation that I will love for my whole life, and I know that I'm going to be there at the 100th anniversary celebration. So I'm so pleased to be here celebrating 50 years, and what an amazing 50 years it has been. 50 years of activism of this organisation being an amazing trailblazer, of a community stepping up to support itself, to support the other members of that community. This organisation in that 50 years has been a change maker, a community hub, and just an enormously important institution that I feel very, very lucky and proud to represent in my role as a federal member for Hotham. And it's an amazing time for us too to be celebrating 50 years of SECL, because what a 2 years we've just had. No one could have predicted all of the things that have happened for our community over this last 2 years. We'll remember this time for the rest of our lives for, I think, some reasons, some bad and negative reasons that have affected the community. People who have lived through enormous financial distress, of mental health anguish, of ill health and death in some instances, but also for some really positive reasons, because we've just lived through our 6th lockdown in Melbourne, and those lockdowns have been our community saying that we're going to give away some of our freedoms and liberties to look after people amongst us who are less frail and more susceptible to illness. Now, one thing I know about SECL is that when there's a need in the Southeast, this organisation steps up. And so it's just a really important time, I think, for us to be celebrating this 50 years when the organisation has met the needs of many tens of thousands of people who live in our local area. This year was very significant for another reason, and that's because we lost someone who is so important to us, probably the most important person to this organisation, and that's the patron of SECL, Mel Mitchell. And I want to just say something brief about what Mel meant to me and to all of the people who had just the amazing privilege of knowing this extraordinary woman. It is absolutely impossible to understand this organisation without knowing Mel as the centre of its origin story. So many of you will know quite a lot about Mel Mitchell. She was trained as a kindergarten teacher, settled with her husband, Eric, in Sandown Park in the 1960s. And her activism started around the streets of her family home. She was looking out for people who were settling in this kind of new area of Melbourne. She was supporting particularly families who were from migrant backgrounds who were coming to settle in the southeast. The Enterprise Migrant Hostel opened in Springvale in 1970, and most of you on this call, I'm sure, would either have a relative who came through the Enterprise Hostel or certainly know someone who went through the hostel themselves. And over the 2 decades that followed the hostel opening, 30,000 migrants and refugees made this their first home when they came to Australia. And these new Australians had a lot of needs. They needed English classes, they needed help finding work, they needed help getting connected to healthcare, support with migration issues. And of course, it wasn't just the hostel. Springvale was really kind of a new area that was being developed, and the Australians who were moving from all over the country to live here, they had needs of their own too. One of my favourite Mel quotes, she said later in her life, "Whenever I saw something that needed to be done, I thought we should do something about it." I mean, it really was that simple. That was Mel's basic ethos. So the Bureau emerged out of this extraordinary sense of practicality and community, where a need was there and the community was going to step up to fill it. And what grew out of the creation of the Springvale Community Aid and Advice Bureau was a whole hub of community facilities, the Springvale Neighbourhood House, Sigma, the Cambodian Association, the Family Mediation Centre. Now, Mel's activism and influence, of course, went well beyond our local area. She went on to become the CEO of the Australian Council of Social Services, which is without doubt the most important voice in social welfare in Australia. And as a measure of that influence, Bob Hawke actually launched his social justice statement at the Bureau in Springvale when he had that important announcement to make about social justice. So Mel was a very powerful contributor to the national debate for her whole life, and most recently that took the form of advocacy around aged care and ageing issues. I know many of you have seen the testimony that she gave to the Aged Care Royal Commission in, I think it was in 2019, and a Royal Commission that went for more than 2 years. This was the most powerful moment in the whole work that the Royal Commission did. Her assessment of our aged care system in Australia was brutal, it was honest, it was real, and it was about what it was like to be on the receiving end of public policy. And John Fain said it revealed more about the failures of the system than 50 experts opining from a think tank or a university. And that was Mel's way. She wasn't a lofty, snooty bureaucrat. She didn't think like one and she didn't speak like one. She was a real human being and she spoke from the heart. But one thing you would never get away with was getting confused by this and thinking that Mel was some kind of pushover or someone who didn't understand the complexity of the things that she was dealing with. Mel absolutely got what was going on. She absolutely knew what it took, not just to understand what was wrong with the systems around her, but to actually change and fix them. Mel had an absolute sense of right and wrong, of justice. And to be the kind of activist that Mel was, you needed that. She was full of belief that things could and should be better. And anyone that met Mel, you could almost feel the frustration just firing off her about all of the things that needed to be fixed. So she was in some ways very much an idealist, but she was as tough as nails. Mel wasn't off with the fairies about how she saw that things could be different. She really understood how politics works. She was canny, she was smart, and she knew how to apply political pressure in just the right ways to get the outcomes that she was looking for. And it's actually really rare to see those two things together, both the belief that things can change, but also the knowledge of how that was going to happen. I know many of us in this room had the privilege of knowing Mel, and it really was a privilege. I can say that with just utter clarity and honesty. I have never met anyone like her. She was a mentor to me. She was my hero. In fact, she and Eric were my heroes because I don't think it's right to speak about one without the other. We lost Eric a few years ago and he had his own story of activism that was just as amazing and compelling as Mel's. These two were greater than the sum of their parts. It was a partnership and together they improved and influence the lives of thousands and thousands of people in our local area and many more across the country. I love them both. And one thing we know now is those two have been reunited, and that's something to celebrate. Mel and Eric achieved so much, but what made it really special was their motivation. They never, ever did anything that wasn't motivated by just the pure belief that community should be there for one another, that we should step up and help one another when there's a need. It was that basic. We often lionize people in death, but there really is nothing to lionize about Mel Mitchell. I can't fit everything she did for our community into a short speech. I can't really even begin to explain the importance, but those of us who knew her knew what a powerful contribution she made. You know, when you live or work in Springvale, as so many of us do or have done, the lives of the people that she touched were everywhere. And there's so many people, probably many of who are with us today, who I see as carrying on Mel's legacy, people like Heather Duggan and Bea Hart. There are dozens of others. And all of those people would point to Mel as their mentor and their inspiration. And that's a truly incredible legacy. She was cherished very rightly by this organisation. She was cherished by me, cherished by our community. Vale Mel, we'll miss you, but we'll never forget you. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much for your words. And I thought it was beautiful that you mentioned that Mel and Eric are together, reunited. So touching my heart here from all the Zoom. So thank you so much. And now we're going to move forward into stories of the 50 years of impact SECL has provided to this community. And before I introduce them, our three guest SECL staff members to come share their stories and the impact of this organisation, I would like to ask you, because you've been so wonderful in the chat box, And I would love to hear from you in the chat box as well as we reminisce and celebrate the work that SECL has provided. A little bit about me also is that before being an entertainer, a full-time entertainer, I also work with refugees and migrants in the southeast suburbs, and I did work with SECL and SCAB and Springvale Neighbourhood House, so I know the community really well. And I've seen the changing faces, you know, from being surrounded by lots of Vietnamese to then seeing the migration of Burmese, South Sudanese, and Afghan people being part of our community here in Australia. So I would like to invite you to share a sentence, a paragraph in the chat box of the services that you, as maybe a staff, has seen the change, or you have experienced the services that SECL have provided. Storytelling is so important to empathy and to growth. And I would love for us to use this time to share your stories so that we can celebrate this together, not just through the screen, but as a unity, all the way from this interweb called Zoom. Now I'd like to introduce our guests who will be sharing a timeline of SECL's achievements. And I'm very honoured to invite Junior. Junior has worked with SECL for 7 years and is the Senior Practitioner Youth and Family Engagement. He's also a former professional soccer player, he's very good, and a qualified exercise sports scientist. Junior started his career working with young people at Malmesbury and Parkville Youth Justice Centres. Michelle is the Manager of Settlement, Inclusion and Prevention and has worked with SECL for 10 years. She holds a Bachelor of Business and Human Resource Management and a Master's of Social Work. Over the last 18 years, she has provided training, support, advocacy and management expertise across a range of local, state and federally funded social work, community development and family violence prevention programs. And Andrea. Andrea has worked with SECL for 8 years after starting as a volunteer with Springvale Community Aid and Advice Bureau. After visiting people seeking asylum in Victoria's local detention centres, Andrea decided to pursue a career in community services and is currently studying her Masters of Social Work. I would like to bring on our 3 guests who will be sharing the timeline of SECL's history in Springvale and in the southeastern suburbs. So please welcome Junior, Michelle and Andrea.
Thank you, Diana, our previous SEAC colleague. So it is my pleasure to now take you through some significant highlights and times in our history of the making of Southeast Community Links. I will just share my screen with you. Wonderful. Okay, so this timeline that I'll be taking you through is also detailed in our annual report. I will begin with the 1970s, the year when it all started, and then Andrea and Junior will follow with key events across the later decades. So having a look at this timeline, it all started in 1970. This was the year that both Springvale Community Aid and Advice Bureau, known memorably as SCAB, and Dandenong Community Advisory Bureau, later known as DCAB, was established. Springvale Community Aid and Advice Bureau opened its office at 5 Osborne Avenue, Springvale, where we are still located to this day, and Dandenong Community Advisory Bureau opened up at the Town Hall, the Dandenong Old Town Hall. At this point, I would like to recognise and we'll take some time to recognise the significance and value of the volunteers that have worked with us over these times, over all of the decades. Volunteers have been really critical in our work and have provided countless hours of support to community across a range of our programs and services. So having a look, thinking about the 1970s, not soon after our opening, Springvale Legal Service opened its doors in 1972 and became a co-located service of ours at 5 Osborne Avenue. And in 1975, in response to the emerging refugee communities from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, our emergency relief and settlement services expanded to cater for the needs of these communities. And this photo that you can hopefully see on the screen is is a really beautiful photo of one of the mothers support groups that was occurring at the time, delivering support to new mums and a range of different services and information workshops that would be really critical to sort of helping them as they settle in a new country. So moving along, we are being brief with this, but moving along to the 1980s. In 1988, Victorian Premier, the Honourable John Cain, opened the renovated 5 Osborne Avenue site with a construction cost of $1 million, funded through the R.E. Ross Foundation, Myer Foundation, and Springvale Council. I think that was the last renovation we had. And for those who are familiar with our Springvale site, I think we need another one, but that's to come later, hopefully. What also makes this year of 1988 a memorable one is that our Prime Minister, the Honourable Bob Hawke, launched the Australian Government's Social Justice Statement towards a fairer Australia at our very own 5 Osborne Avenue, Springvale office. I'd like to take this time to read you an excerpt from his speech, which he delivered on the 2nd of May, 1988. The launch today of this report towards a fairer Australia, social justice under Labor, marks an important new stage in the life of the Labor government. It is a pleasure to launch it here at the Springvale Community Aid and Advice Bureau, because it is at centres such as this that the effectiveness of social justice programs is ultimately tested. And I believe too that centres such as these, both in their very existence and in the quality of the services they are capable of delivering, reflect the depth of the Labor government's commitment to enhancing and expanding such programs. That speech is a really amazing one. It does go on for a few pages, but you know, this was something that I never knew about Springvale Community Aid Advice Bureau, with Bob Hawke visiting and launching his social justice program. So this is pretty impressive to think that he was actually here at our site. So covering briefly the 1970s and 80s, I will now pass you over. Actually, I think I should have shared that one. So that was part of Prime Minister Hawke's social justice report. Okay. You can't see it all, so that's why I did read most of that out. But now I will pass you over to Andrea Shepherd, who will take you through the next few decades. Just give me a minute to pass over the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and I hope you can all hear me okay. So as Michelle said, I will take you through the next 2 decades, so the 1990s and the 2000s. So in the 1990s, there were 2 major events. We had SEAC that was born, and so was I, Lucky Sackle. So in 1991, the Southern Ethnic Advisory and Advocacy Council was established, originally to amplify the voice and needs of older migrant communities, but soon changed as they switched their focus to become strong advocates for the unique needs of migrant and refugee young people. Some of the key advocacy projects they were involved with were advocacy for interpreting services, public housing, credit contacts, gambling, and youth unemployment. So here is a photo of our vibrant SEAC community. And if you look closely, you may be able to spot Junior, Michelle, and even Diana. And in 1993, the Honourable Rosemary Crowley, Minister of Family Services, launched the Australian Emergency Relief Manual from our 5 Osborne site. We also began our financial counselling services. And from the beginning, it was clear that interpreters were essential in financial counselling to explain credit and money matters. This continues to be a really important aspect today as we advocate for the rights to interpreters in our banking sector. Then in 1995, our founder, Merle Mitchell, retired after 26 years of tirelessly advocating for the community. She was a true inspiration to us all, and she'll always be remembered, no doubt. Then now we move on to the 2000s. So in the 2000s, when people were scared of Y2K and the thought of computers collapsing, SECL and SCAB's work continued. In 2002, YouthLinks began operating for multicultural youth, and in the following year, our refugee and migrant settlement services expanded significantly with the arrivals of families from South Sudan. In 2007, our youth housing program was established for low-income families and young people. To this day, we have comprehensive settlement and youth housing services, supporting both established and newly emerging community. And here's the team with the Mayor and Chief Magistrate Brian Burrows launching the services at our YouthLinks site. I'll now pass you on to Junior, who will take you through the 2010s up to the current days.
Thank you, Andrea. Thanks, Michelle. So from 2010 onwards, a lot of amazing things has happened to our organization. Not that many good things have not happened before, don't take me wrong. However, with the advantage of computer and record keeping and all of those things, so information now it's easier to share and to restore as well. So I'll share some of those moments with you guys. Our learning driving program, aka L2P, was established. SECL also launched the Money Trouble program in so many different languages. We expanded our financial counseling program to cover Dandenong, Casey, and Cardinia, become the largest in the region. In 2015, a historical moment. Springvale Community Aid Advice Bureau, Dandenong Community Advisory Bureau, Southern Ethnic Advisory and Advocacy Council merged to form Southeast Community Links. Since then, we have increased the capacity of our youth service, not only delivering driving programs, but also providing a holistic support to young people with employment support, education, and also, most important, forming leaders. As you can see on this photo, some of you may recognize this is Lizzie, and now she is the Victoria Multicultural Youth Commissioner. SECL became the largest provider in financial counseling for diverse communities in Victoria. We expanded our family violence prevention program to launch a pilot that tested what works to prevent family violence in migrant and refugee community. In 2019, we expanded the settlement service into City of Casey to meet the needs of refugee and new migrants. Partnered with Afghan and Indian communities to co-design culturally appropriate Change the Story family violence prevention resource. With the arrival of COVID-19, SECL quickly responded to challenges faced by community members, which was one of the few organizations remain open during the lockdown. We have issued over $500,000 in vital support, reaching over 10,000 people. SECL worked closely with multicultural communities to address the significant barriers they experienced to understand important information related to COVID-19 pandemic. With the support of a newly employed 5 bicultural workers, SECL delivered a series of information sessions in language to Tamil, Dari, Nuer, South Sudanese, Vietnamese, and Burmese-speaking communities to help close the gap of misinformation about COVID and ensure multicultural communities have equal access to critical information that affect their lives. While we've been operating for over 50 years, we can see that many of these issues haven't changed, and we can still working towards to achieve better and socioeconomic outcomes for our community members. As well, we see that many of the programs we had across these early decades have continued for in much more depth and breadth to address the complexity faced by disadvantaged communities. We are looking forward for the next 50 years to continue our advocacy and support for multicultural communities and all disadvantaged in the Southeast. Thank you.
Thank you, Junior. Thank you to Andrea and Michelle for a 50-year recap. And yes, I was part of the team. I was part of SEAC for a good 8 years. So it does feel like home. It's wonderful to see that the organisation has continued to do the work. And I just want to say thank you so much for the work you continue to do.
Thank you for also helping pave the path for us to be here with amazing work. So thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Junior. And as Junior just said, Lizzie has grown from a young person who was a client of our services, and she became a leader within our services, and now is a leader within the Victorian community, which is amazing to see what organisations like SECL can do to young people. And SECL don't just work with young people, you also work with people from all ages. So congratulations on 50 years. And I do want to have a look, and if you go to the chat box, you can see some history in the chat box coming alive right now. We've got Maria saying welcoming, dedicated, supportive words that she describes SECL. We've got Raylene also saying volunteered in 2017 and then started as a financial counsellor in 2019, and very privileged to be part of this community. And Katrina has said, I worked many years in Dandenong until COVID, and now I work from home like all of us. I'm in my bedroom, but I do have a beautiful Indigenous artwork that reminds me of the land that I'm from. I love working alongside the staff and volunteers in Dandenong and miss them greatly. But the amazing thing is that we will see you very soon, and we are going to have now the CEO, Peter McNamara, who will be speaking about the strategic plan launch, which is very important, which will help with the work of SECL into the beyond years. Peter was appointed CEO of SECL in March 2021. Welcome. And has over 20 years of experience in the community and corporate sectors, including at Good Shepherd Macro Finance and the Asylum Seekers Resource Centre, which continue to do brilliant work. And I'm also part of Asylum Seekers Resource Centre's telethon. If you are not involved in that, always call in during World Refugee Day and donate your money. Peter has studied finances and strategy at Harvard Business School, very smart, and Stanford Business School and Melbourne Business School. He is the current president of the Australian Council of Social Service. Please welcome Peter McNamara, CEO of SECL.
Thanks, Diana. Hello, everyone. Thank you also. Before we look at the strategy and where we're going, it's equally important to acknowledge our history and our legacy, and it's a fantastic opportunity today to have Diana, yourself, Claire O'Neill, Candy Bowers. I'm still got a tear in my eye from Candy, because it wasn't just by chance or accident we chose or we reached out to these three people. it was because we knew you were connected. You understood the history and the importance of an organisation such as Seckle. So thank you for your time today. To Michelle, Junior and Andrea for sharing a bit of just a touch of the history has been amazing, and it's a long history. Back in when I started in March, in about April, under the direction of the board and the chair, we began developing the strategic plan for Southeast Community Links for 2025. We wanted to have a goal. We wanted to have something audacious to set a path forward. So we decided we'd look at tripling our impact by 2025. We looked at the foundations of Southeast Community Links, which, as you know, are the vision of every person counts, every system's fair. Although we might add some more into that after Candy's words about the story of a service, a history of care. Our purpose has remained strong to improve the social and economic outcomes for people in our community. And all this is underpinned by our history and our values of inclusion, equality, compassion, dignity and choice. So as we developed the plan, we looked at firstly our services, and our services remain strong, incredibly busy, incredibly important, whether it be community development to build the capacity and inclusion of our community, whether it's offering employment pathways and opportunities for coal communities, whether it's emergency relief for people in crisis, financial wellbeing and counselling to get back on track with your money, family violence services ensuring families and women remain safe, housing and homelessness services and supports, settlement to newly arrived migrants and refugees, youth services from education, employment, housing to social participation. All these services remain strong. And one of the themes that came out through the planning with the support of people like Lisa Barron and Renee Hancock and the management team, which I want to name, who've spent a lot of time on this, Marlena, Michelle, Kay, Zoe, Chris and Caroline, on top of your busy workloads, we endeavoured and we worked very hard on a strategy that would elevate our work, but also not forget what we're strong about. We spoke to over 100 of our stakeholders, whether it be through surveys, whether it be through face-to-face meetings or Zooms, about what Seckle is good at, what we're known for, what we need to be better at. We overlaid that with the demographic data and the information that we see on the ground, the first hand, through our services. And we came up with we identified what our strengths are, but also what our opportunities are. And we also knew that through putting these together and through the right behaviours and the right commitment and having a goal of tripling our impact, we can make a bigger difference in the community. So to achieve that, we've come up with 5 goals. The first goal is placing community at the heart of our work. Now that's an obvious one. People in community should be the obvious ones. But at times in organisations, you sometimes forget the importance of that. So we wanted to make sure that was centre and square, front and centre of all our work, the community. And to achieve that, we'll make sure that our services are where the community needs to be. So a many doors approach. So whether it be through the phone, face-to-face, through outreach, we want to be there for our clients in the community. That whole of client approach. So where we're very fortunate at Seckle is we have that multidisciplinary services. So someone can come in for ER, but it might be financial counselling they need or family violence support. We want to make sure that the voice of our clients is embedded in our work. And that's been true to community services when you're listening to your clients as well as reacting to their needs in the most appropriate manner. And that also means designing and looking at our services to make sure they're the most appropriate for the community. So goal 1 is about placing community at the heart of our work. Goal 2, very important, evidence-based impact, using snapshots and data to improve our service outcomes, designing programs that are based on evidence, but also producing those snapshots and data to influence stakeholders, our partners, to inform policy. As Michelle read out before from Prime Minister Hawke, he spoke about in this forecourt, just in Springvale here, that the success of any policy is through it being developed and delivered and tested in services like these. So we want to bring that and elevate that back up to the stakeholders. As I said, with data, we want to use it as a tool more effectively to inform change within society. So goal 2 is evidence-based impact. Goal 3 is around forging partnerships. We want to make it very clear that this is not about us only. We cannot do this alone. We do this work through great partnerships, through so many people on this session right now and many others. We want to continue to forge authentic partnerships with organisations that want to make a difference. I'll be clear that not everyone plays well in partnerships. Not all organisations do partner well. Some are very good at what they do, and that's fantastic. We want to keep demanding of ourselves deeper, stronger collaborations and partnerships. And that's through reaching out, that's through looking at uncommon allies at times, but we have to change how we do things as well to make sure we can reach and make a greater impact. So forging deeper, stronger relationships and partnerships is a key part of the work we do. Of course, all of this will be underpinned by our connection to community and the importance of community. Goal 4 is very important to the organisation, as you've heard. As our vision says, every person counts, every system fair. To change the systems, we need to advocate. And you've heard a bit of late, there's been a lot of push against advocacy, whether it be trying to be changes to the charity laws. But what is strong and what is so fundamental to our society, to the organisation on these calls, to every person, to this organisation, is advocacy. To be able to amplify the voice of clients, to bring about systems level change, develop client confidence so they can be self-reliant as appropriate when they feel ready, and inform our stakeholders. We really are going to elevate our advocacy a huge amount within Seccle. I'm very pleased and incredibly excited by the work so far. The team have grabbed a hold of this. I think we've had 3 submissions to government inquiries already over the last 6 months. We're bringing about some significant systems change with banking, and we want to definitely elevate that more and more. So that'll be with partners, through and with others for sure. So we look forward to further advocacy as an organisation. Goal 5 is around our foundations. So none of this can be achieved without strong foundations. And those foundations are around people. So making sure we work in an integrated manner. And one of the great things and the hard things about COVID is there's great learnings about how do we work more integrated and break down silos within society. I'm very pleased to see how we've changed over this period, how the team have adapted from the leadership team, from the frontline services. We want to continue to adapt. We want to continue to have a learning culture where we will share. Great leadership or great strategies where you share information, you share learnings with others. And we want to do that with our partners and with the community. Also, our culture will become stronger, our services will become stronger through the more diversity we have, but the stronger behaviours we have. So all this is underpinned by our diversity and our behaviours. And of course, we want to make sure we have secure ongoing funding and sustainability. And at times we forget that sustainability is also not financial, it's also organisational. So we want to make sure we have a commitment to our teams to make sure they are safe and secure in what they do. I'm very excited to present this strategy. It's been a huge amount of work on behalf of the team. Equally, what's very important is the implementation of this strategy and to make sure that we're reporting back to you. So I make a commitment to report back to our partners, to this group, to our team, not just at the annual report, but during the year through snapshots to show what impact we're having, where we're learning, where we're making mistakes. We'll share all that because if we can do it, we can do it together, we can certainly make a greater impact and greater outcomes for the people we serve, our community. So thank you, Diana. Thank you to everyone. I'll go. I don't want to rabbit on like an old tram. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you and welcome to the team here at Seccle 2021. And what's so wonderful, the strategy that you have for the future of this organisation. And before we do the AGM, I would like to, I was meant to do a 10-minute song, but I've been cut short, but I'll do a 2-minute song and just say thank you so much for joining us and watching. We are coming live on Facebook Live as well. So keep that chat box live. Pop any stories, experiences you've had at SECL. And I've just made a really quick improvised tune from the words that have come out from the event today. So I'm very talented. I've got a ukulele. Okay. 50 years is a long time to give. 50 years of service to community. From Springvale to the southeast, what the community needs. Mel knew what it took to create change. She's tough as nails. She was my hero, and Eric too. Best years in my working life in 3 countries. Welcoming, dedicated and supportive. I'm privileged to be working here at SECL. A dedicated, knowledgeable team at this place. I miss them greatly. Here at SECL, my mom would sit and wait for help, and look what happened. Her 3 daughters are independent and helping the community. That's what happens. Heart, impact, advocacy, strength, growth, community. When you give, you will receive. Oh, 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 thank you, Junior, Michelle and Andrea, and welcome to the team. Peter, Claire for your words, and Candy for your tears. When you give, you will receive. 50 years of service to this community. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your work to this community. You enjoyed that? Oh, all right. Now I hope I warmed you up for our AGM. I will now be introducing Ross, the chair, Ross Hedburn. And during the questions, during the AGM, you can ask a question, just pop it in the Q&A box. So next to the chat box, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can pop in your questions. And a little bio of Ross. Ross, since 2007, has held several board roles with SCAB and later SECL. As chair, he's navigated the 2015 merger and continues to chair the SECL board. Ross holds degrees in civil engineering and business administration. His connection with Springvale and Dandenong spans some 35 years and includes business, local government and sport. And I'm not expecting Ross to sing a song for the AGM. So please welcome Ross Hedburn. He must be getting his ukulele out and getting ready.
Diana, thank you very much indeed. On behalf of the board of Southeast Community Links, I would like to welcome you all to this AGM and officially declare the meeting open. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I welcome especially all our life members, our board members, both past and present, members, staff, volunteers, and our many guests who have joined this meeting remotely. At the outset, I've got to say what a wonderful job Renee Hancock, our communication specialist, Daniel Corrales of Atticus Media, our online producer, Diana Nguyen, our MC and improvising singer, and Candy Bowers, who managed to make another Zoom-led meeting so memorable and enjoyable. Thank you all. And of course, thanks very much to our staff, Michelle, Andrea, Junior, and Peter, on outlining the 50-year timeline and, more importantly, the strategic plan ongoing. It was a very excellent way to start a remote AGM. Hopefully we can be back face-to-face next year. I especially welcome and thank Claire O'Neill, the Shadow Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, and our local federal MP for Hotham. Claire is a long-time supporter of SECL and is also a former chair of the Springvale Community Aid and Advice Bureau. Claire has maintained a continuing interest in our organisation for over 2 decades, and it was fitting that she delivered a wonderful tribute to our past founder and patron, Merle Mitchell, today. I'd also like to welcome the following who are online: Meng Heng Tak, the MLA member for Clarinda and a regular SECL supporter; Councillor Angela Long, the immediate past mayor of the city of Greater Dandenong and another long-term supporter of ours and a regular attender at our AGMs. Angela will formally conduct our election of office bearers later in this meeting. I welcome Councillor Rhonda Garrard, one of the newer members on Dandenong Council and a regular supporter. Councillor Sean O'Reilly is also online, another of our Dandenong councillors who has supported SECL over many years. Therese Fitzgerald, the Police Commander of Southern Region for Victoria Police, is online. SECL have many occasions where we work closely with the Victoria Police. Merle Mitchell's daughter and son, Sally and Rick, are also online. We thank them for sharing their mother with our organisation over the past 50 years. We again express our condolences to you both on the passing of your mother. Merle was not only our founder and our patron, but throughout her life, she was a magnificent role model and strong advocate on the national stage for those in need, the neglected, and those unable to advocate for themselves. This organisation is committed to ensuring that her legacy will live on well into the future. Many of our founders, partners and sponsors have joined us online today as well, and we thank each and every one of you for your ongoing support in these difficult times. We also have received formal apologies from Pauline Richards, MP, the member for Cranbourne, Dr. Ten Q, MLC, the member for South Eastern Metropolitan, the Honourable Daniel Andrews, member for Mulgrave and the Premier of Victoria, Grizel Walmagia from the City of Greater Dandenong, Carol Drummond, a former DCAB director and SECL member who is unfortunately unwell and in hospital at the moment, Phyllis Sisterino, former SECL staff member, the Honourable Martin Foley, MP, Minister for Health, Ambulance Services and Equality, and last but by no means least, Martin Fiddler, the Director of Community Services for the City of Greater Dandenong and one of our staunchest supporters. The minutes of the previous annual meeting held in February this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic were circulated with the notice of this meeting. Board members Jan Cormack and Deborah Remfrey have moved that those minutes be adopted as a true and accurate record of that general meeting. I put the motion that those minutes be adopted. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. I now have much pleasure in presenting the SECL annual report for 2021. The full report will be available online via our website immediately after this meeting. I will leave you all to read the report at your leisure. However, I would like to make a few salient points from my report. Seckel has had another very challenging but successful year. We have generally helped and assisted a growing number of needy clients across a broader geographic area than ever before. For the second year, our staff, volunteers and students have operated predominantly remotely and maintained a full range of services, especially emergency relief, to our clients. For the second year in a row, our budget has surpassed the $5 million mark, signifying the impact of our organisation in supporting our community and the additional assistance received by our funders at a state and federal level. We have kept our doors open, our phones manned without ever resorting to answering machines, and all our staff fully employed at their normal hours and rates without the need for JobKeeper assistance. All in all, a fantastic team effort. Under our new CEO, Peter McNamara, we have seen our organisation stabilise, our management team reinvigorated, a new strategic plan developed, increased funding secured, and our advocacy efforts on behalf of our clients ramped up. We are truly aiming to live Merle Mitchell's continuing mantra of every person counts and every system is fair. During the various lockdowns, we have, of course, had intermittent difficulties and brushes with the COVID-19 pandemic. However, on all occasions, our planning and preparedness has paid dividends and our staff have come through with flying colours. On behalf of the board, I thank you all. Today, we are farewelling 2 board members who have given special service over a number of years. We thank our Deputy Chair, Sarah Lowe, for her contribution over more than 3 years, and we wish her well in her challenging continuing career. We also thank Rob Davies, the Chair of our Building and Resources Committee, and also a former Deputy Chair. Rob has given a decade of outstanding service to Seckel and SCAB. Prior to joining us, he headed up the Dandenong Development Board for 10 years. Rob's service has been exceptional, and we wish him well as he spends more time with his family. Today, we also thank Chris Hines, our Finance and Administration Manager. Chris has steered our finances well over the past 3 years and has played a vital role in ensuring our IT systems could cope as we move to operating remotely during the pandemic. We wish Chris well as he reunites with his partner in South America. In closing, I thank all my board colleagues, our CEO, and all managers, staff, students, and volunteers for their unwavering support, guidance, and dedication to the tasks at hand in some very difficult times. Our organisation is based on solid foundations, is far stronger than any single individual, and will continue to support our local communities well into the future. I thank you all. I now call on our CEO, Peter McNamara, to briefly give his report to us.
Thanks, Ross, and hello, everyone. I'll just table the annual report, and as Ross has shared, it'll be sent around online and it'll be on our website after this meeting. No doubt, during an unprecedented period in our history, Seckel has remained true to our values of every person counts, every system's fair, by continuing to address the unmet needs of our community, ever made more urgent during the second year of the pandemic. And while the pandemic continued to wreak havoc across our health, social, and economic foundations, and whilst we're all impacted in some way, impacts have not been felt equally, but have exacerbated existing inequalities and gaps in society. And I'm very proud and thankful of the team at Seckel, the staff, the volunteers, the students, who remained open, who adapted to the needs of the community during a time when they were challenged themselves by the personal impacts of COVID-19. It's a great testament to our community sector and to many people on this session that while living through a pandemic, they also rose to the occasion to support more people than ever. I've got some brief stats which I'll read out, but there's more detail and richness in the report, which I encourage you to read when we share it with you. So during the last 12 months, we saw more people than ever. We serviced and supported 32,000 sessions with clients, or over 32,000, which is a record. We resolved over just under $6 million of debt for people who have taken out or been preyed upon by predatory lenders. Through partnerships with the local government, the Victorian government, community organisations like Enlive and Monash Health, we arranged vaccination information sessions. We arranged group vaccinations, and we informed or kept safe over 3,000 people, all during a period when we're trying to look after ourselves as well. So to the team, for your commitment, for your resilience and your true compassion for the community, thank you. I also like to just take a moment just to share a brief story of a client. We do have many stories in the annual report. I just want to tell the story of Anushka. Anushka is a 30-year-old mum with a 4-year-old child. Anushka came into our services through emergency relief. She came in for some food parcels and some help with her rent. But like so many situations, when people come in through ER, it's something else that we look towards, the causal effect. So through the support of the team and being a multidisciplinary agency, the team found out that Anushka was also experiencing physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, and cohesive control. Through the support of SECL, but also our partners, where we involved over 20 agencies or services to support Anushka. We got her safe. We got her into a safe accommodation. She's got her debt sorted. We've also enabled her or given her a scholarship so she can study, so she can find a new beginning for ourselves. So that's a great example, just a simple example of how through partnerships, through someone coming through our front door, but through our partnerships, we all play a role. So I thank you all on this call, to all our partners, whether it be the local government, the state government, the federal government, or our community partners, for what you bring to the table every day. I'd also like to highlight that as a community-led organisation, one of the things we want to do is listen to our community when we talk about the voice of community, but also of our staff and teams. So this year we implemented an annual survey of the team to find out how we're going, what can we improve on. And I'm very pleased to report that of the survey, we had 96% of staff were either very satisfied or satisfied working at SECL, which is an extraordinary satisfaction rate. We also, equally important, our clients rated SECL's services 4.7 out of 5. 94% said they would recommend SECL as a trusted place for information and support. So we thank the feedback, the unvarnished truth from both our staff and our clients. I'd also like to acknowledge the sad passing of Mel Mitchell, who again did live the vision of SECL. Her local and national advocacy for vulnerable people impacted and improved the lives of millions of Australians. And while you'll be sadly missed, Mel, you will not be missing from our vision or our future plans. I'd also like to finish by thanking the board, the chair, for their support, their encouragement, their strategic insights, and governance oversight. The overall partners we have, the governments, the local government, the federal government, the state government, our community partners, thank you for your commitment to improve the social, health and economic outcomes for vulnerable people. And whilst we look forward, there's lots of uncertainty still. Who would have known a year ago we'd still be in this situation? But one thing we do know for sure out of all this is that SECL will continue to play a part to ensure a safer and fairer future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that report. And I now call on our Treasurer, Fiona Garside, to present our financial report.
Hello all. Thank you everyone, members and guests, for your attendance at the Secl AGM today. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Diana for emceeing the event, to Claire for her beautiful message about Merle and Secl, and also Candy's wonderful poem. I really wish she could poetry slam my Treasurer's report, but maybe that's something for next year. I would like to say thank you for the contribution from all the staff, the board, and the volunteers for their outstanding work over the past 12 months, and congratulate them on showing such a strong commitment to delivering our programs. I would like to also make note of the sad passing of our patron, Merle Mitchell. I'd like to thank her for the contribution she made to the organisation and the wider community. From a financial perspective, I would like to thank the auditors at Haynes Muir Hill for their continuing advice and support. The financial year 2021 audited figures are summarised in the annual report, including the profit and loss, balance sheet and cash flow statement. A full set of the auditors' reports are available on request. This is the 5th full year of operations for Secl, and I'll now take you through some of the headline numbers for the past financial year. For the year ended 30th of June 2021, Secl reported a surplus of $88,000 at a profit margin of 2%. Which was slightly below budgeted expectation, but a strong result considering the pandemic restrictions we operated in. It is worth highlighting that although our surplus reduced year on year, Secl continued to operate throughout the lockdown period, and staff kept their jobs at the same hours. The organisation managed cash flows effectively without requesting any job seeker allowance, which meant government funds could be directed to those businesses and individuals in crisis. Total income for the year was $5.23 million. This is the second time in Secl's history, as Ross mentioned, that the $5 million mark has been reached, and it represents income growing by 5% year on year. Grants from funders increased by nearly 7% year on year. New funding secured during the year was predominantly related to COVID-19 issues. This supported our teams in crisis response, including working for a Victoria program, multicultural family violence, financial capability and problem gambling. Our ability to support the COLD community during the pandemic was key to our success in gaining new funding as well. Since the inception of Secl over 5 years ago, income has grown by 14%, and the cumulative profit over this period is nearly $600,000. From an organisational perspective, this has allowed Secl to attract and retain quality people and provides a launchpad and time to deliver on the strategic vision of the board and CEO as discussed today. Although the grant income grew during the year due to lockdown restrictions and interest rates being lower than forecast, other incomes was down by just over $90,000 when compared with the prior year. With employee costs being linked to award agreements and inflation, these have increased during the period as well. As a result of the additional funding received, the headcount increased and new staff joined the team. The average staff FTE rose by 10% year on year and now sits at 42.5. Being able to take on new staff during the crisis was a real positive for the region. Operational costs were slightly less year on year due to lower on-site costs and the bulk of our IT upgrade falling into the prior year. By focusing on delivering our strategic plan and managing costs effectively, we aim to have a budget surplus of $20,000 for the current financial year 21-22 and a forecasting income of $5.6 million, $1 million of which is driven from new business tenders submitted by our CEO and management team. Secl remains in a sound financial position with strong liquidity. All current and deferred liabilities remain covered. As at 30 June 2021, the accumulated surplus was $1.4 million and cash at hand is $3.8 million. Secl continues its policy to provide for contingencies such as long service leave, and we are guided by our finance team and auditors in arriving at the appropriate amounts. Please refer to the statement by our auditors who have issued an unqualified opinion on the accounts, and they have been prepared in order to meet the requirements of the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commissions Act 2012. I would like to sincerely thank our finance team led by our CFO, Chris Hines, for delivering such a great set of numbers whilst operating under pandemic restrictions for the better part of the year. Whilst also living in Melbourne during this period with young children at home and isolated from loved ones, I know how hard it has been for everyone to perform their roles. And hopefully now we are seeing our work life return to the new normal. I wanted to finish today with a thought that not everything that you can measure has value, and not everything valuable can be measured. The strength of this organisation is represented not just in the numbers discussed today, but in its people and the life-changing work that they achieve. Many thanks for your time, and I will now pass back to Ross to put forward the relevant motions.
Thanks very much, Fiona, for that report and for the detailed words surrounding it, and also for your hard work. I would now accept the motion that the annual report and the financial report as presented be adopted, and I understand that that's been moved by the Treasurer, Fiona Garside, and seconded by long-standing board member and member of the Finance Committee, Chris James. I put the motion. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. I now take another motion that the auditors, Haynes Muir Hill, be reappointed for the ensuing year. That motion has been moved by Fiona Garside, seconded by Chris James, and I put that motion that all those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. And again, I think the ayes have it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the presentation section of the annual report. I now would like to introduce Councillor Angela Long of the City of Greater Dandenong. Councillor Long is the outgoing Mayor of the city, and she's kindly deigned to join us today to say a few words and to conduct the election of board members. Angela, I trust you're online.
Thank you, Ross. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, their spirits and ancestors, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We recognise and respect their continuing connection to climate, culture, and country. I'd also like to pay my respect to the late Mel Mitchell, a great friend to everyone. Thank you to the South East Community Links Board for inviting me along this afternoon to attend your annual general meeting. As a long-term supporter of your organisation, I want to thank you for your support and valuable services that you offer to the residents of Greater Dandenong. As the leading emergency relief provider, I've been so impressed by how agile and responsive your organisation has been in your service delivery to our residents in need, especially during this pandemic. I know you have more residents than ever before facing crisis, and your ability to create more access points for your clients, redeploy staff to meet their needs, and upskill volunteers to provide a holistic wraparound service is appreciated. Thank you for your work. Thank you for working towards achieving higher rates of long-term stability and resilience for the most vulnerable residents in our community in crisis. I congratulate you all on everything you have achieved in 2021. And I look forward to working with you and to continue your ongoing success service delivery for our great city in 2022. Thank you. Now we will go to the election of the board members of the South East Community Links for 2021-22. 3 board members, Jan Cormack, Chris James and Ross Hepburn, retire by rotation and being eligible offered themselves for re-election and have duly nominated and seconded. Noel Tivendale was appointed to the board in March 2021 and being eligible offered himself for election and has been duly nominated and seconded. Dara Tang, a former SCAB board member, being eligible, has offered himself for election and has been duly nominated and seconded. As the number of persons nominated equaled the number of vacancies, I declare Jan Cormack, Chris James, Ross Hepburn, Noel Tivendale and Dara Tang duly elected to the board of South East Community Links. I now return you to Ross Hepburn to chair the rest of the meeting. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Angela, very much. And we thank not only Councillor Angela Long, but I know that Councillor Sean O'Reilly's online, and I know that Councillor Rhonda Garrard's online. And we'd also like you to pass our thanks on to Mr. John Benny, the CEO of Greater Dandenong, who is also one of our most fervent supporters. The full support of Council is always truly appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formalities of our AGM. I declare the meeting closed and I formally hand back to Diana, our wonderful MC, and I hope that there's perhaps a little bit more time for a little bit more ukulele, Diana.
Thank you, Ross. Thanks for everyone for joining back and staying with us for the AGM, and thank you to all the wonderful people who have joined our AGM and celebration of 50 years of impact from SECL. I could do a little quick song. Not sure we have enough time. We've gone a bit over time, but if there is a little encore, I could go, but I know people need dinner. Peter and Ross, if you want to bring out your trombones and your instruments, we can do that too. But I just want to say thank you so much for attending. I do know that in 2022 we'll be face-to-face and celebrating a great year of the work that SECL has done. And I do want to finish off, I'll do a repeat of the song and end with a little thank you. When you give, you receive. 50 years is a long time to give. 50 years of service to community. 50 years. If you want to join up and do a dance as well, yes. Thank you to Junior, Michelle and Andrea. Thanks to Ross for chairing the AGM. Welcome to the team, Peter. And all those numbers from the finances getting me a bit tired. Thank you, Claire, for your words. Candy, for your tears. When you give, you receive. 50 years of service to community. 50 years. Thank you for all your work for our community. 50 years. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining our AGM. I hope you had a wonderful time, and we'll be saving the chat box of all the stories that you've popped in there. We'll see you all next time.